Okay, this is the third installment, if you will, of the practice final exam or the semester one review. So this is over chapters 5 and 6. Again, obviously, hopefully it's easy to find, but if you're looking for chapters 1 and 2 or 3 and 4, those are the other parts of the video. We remember this top number is the first number times the last number. So 1 times -8 is -8. Factors of -8 that add up to be -2. So I list all my factors, and again, since it's negative, I always put my left-hand numbers. And you don't even have to do this if you know what they are already. That's up to you. So +8, -2, and 4. 3 doesn't work. 4 works, but we already have that one down, so we're done there. So 1 adds up to be -2. Well, if you look, -2 and 4 are close. They add up to be +2. But again, if that ever happens where you're that close, you have the right number, just the different sign or the wrong sign, all you need to do is change both of these to their opposites. So when you do that, +2 and -4, they still multiply by -8, then now they add up to -2. So x minus x plus 2, x minus 4. Remember, these are not telling you to solve. So if you go ahead and put -2 and +4, that's going to be wrong. You need to make sure you're factoring, not solving. So read the instructions carefully. Don't mind that bell. Next one, same thing. This one has a leading coefficient. So again, this one is a little bit more involved. The top number is 2 times 20. So the top number is 40. Factors of 40 that add up to be 13. So again, if I list my factors of 40, I have 1 and 40, 2 and 20. 3 doesn't work. Does 4 and 10, and 5 and 8. The ones that do add up to be 13 are +5 and +8. And again, this is where it's a good idea to go ahead and double check, mainly for signs, if anything. +5 times +8 is +40. +5 plus +8 is +13. So it's not a bad idea to do that. So we plug those in just like before, but this is where the similarities end. Now, since there's leading coefficient, we divide both of these by that leading coefficient. Then the next, we take both of those and reduce them if possible. So we have 5/2, that doesn't reduce. 8/2 reduces down to just 4. And the last but not least, if you have a leading coefficient, a denominator, that goes up as your number in front. So this is 2x plus 5 and x plus 4. So all this extra stuff at the end was because there's a leading coefficient. So just be careful with that. A lot of people made that mistake. It is multiple choice on the test, but I am assuming that I probably put this answer on the test. I maybe put this answer on there as well with the fraction there. So just make sure you're being careful. Number 42, same thing. We have another one. Coefficient. 3 is -18. Factors of -18 add up to be -7. Since it's negative, -2 and 9, -3 and 6, 4 doesn't work. 6. So which one add up? This we end up with +7, not -7. So if that happens, all you need to do is change your signs. Change that to negative, -9. And again, this is where I've been preaching. Take the extra 2 seconds to double check. +2 is -18. +2 is negative. To do that, except with x plus 2, x minus 9. There is a leading coefficient, so we have to divide both of them by a number. When the last one we did, the first fraction didn't reduce at all. The second one reduced down to a whole number. Both of these fractions reduced, and neither of them are to a whole number. So not a lot different, but I want to give you an example. Both of these, 2/6 over 6. So both of them by 3/2. Now just the last go up in front. 3x plus 3. Now again, for those problems, do not use the quadratic formula because we're not solving those, we're factoring. Now, technically, if you actually want to do some extra work and some extra research, or if you're like a better math student than I was in high school, which isn't really saying a whole lot, but you can actually do the quadratic formula and then take your answers and work backwards to get the factored form. If you want to try that, you can. But again, that is, in my opinion, that's harder than just factoring. So the next one, when we factor this one, this is a difference in squares. Now again, don't be that person that adds 81 to both sides. So you get 16x squared is equal to 81, and then you divide so you can take the square root. That's great. If you're solving, that is absolutely the way to do it. But we're not solving, we're factoring. So this is a difference in squares. A is what squared is 16x squared? Well, that's just 4x. 4x squared is 16x squared. What squared is 81 is 9. 9 squared is 81. Once you have that, remember it's just 4x plus 9 and 4x minus 9. There's nothing else to that. This one, take out a GCF. So between the 20, you can take out 5. And between x to the third and x squared, I'll take out the lowest x total. What do we have left? If we take out a 5x squared, or 5 divided by 5 is 1. If you want to put it there, you can. We have 3 x's, we took 2 out, so I have 1 left. Negative 20 divided by 5 is negative 4. I had 2 x's left, I took both of them out. So the answer, now we're going to go multiple choice. It's not going to have that 1 in there. But if you need to put it in there to make it make more sense to you, that's fine. Just make sure you realize this is how it's going to show up on multiple choice. Same thing with 45 as far as I give you this hint. Factor this with factor by grouping. So again, group these together. I always add my own plus sign. I always keep whatever sign is with this third number. I always keep those together. Then you take out a greatest common factor from each group. So the first group, I take out a 2x squared. That leaves me with x plus 5. 10 divided by 2 is 5. I had 2 x's. I took both of them out. Then the next group, the greatest common factor, so I can take out a positive 5. So that leaves 5 divided by 5 is 1. So just 1x. 25 divided by 5 is 5. These two are the same. That's the whole idea. That's a great way to make sure you're on the right track. So everything that is inside goes together. So we have 2x squared plus 5. Everything that is inside of parentheses that are the exact same, they go together in the same set. So with factor by grouping, you should always end up with 2 binomials if that helps you. Factor this using the sum and differences of cubes. So that is where you're going to use your formula sheet. So give me one little second. This just happened the other day. Okay, so this is the formula sheet you will get on the final. So the one you're looking for is this one. Now, I know this is not your favorite one you've ever done, but the good news is it is multiple choice, so hopefully you can use that to your advantage a little bit, and at the very least, hopefully you can narrow down to like a 50-50 shot, or you can at least take one of the answers out. But we're going to use what number to the third is x to the third? Well, that's just x. X to the third is x to the third. What number to the third is 125? That is 5. My formula is, just so I don't have to keep flipping back and forth, a plus or minus b is a squared minus plus a times b plus b squared. I think. Let me double check. So we take these numbers and plug them in, and we have a plus sign, so that's what we're going to go with first. So it is x plus 5. Then I always use parentheses, x squared. And then this one, since it was plus, now this one has to be minus because we're using the top sign. X times 5 plus, that's always plus, 5 squared. And last step, we simplify that stuff out. So x plus 5 x squared minus 5x plus 25. Again, plugging those numbers into an equation. So hopefully that one's not bad. If it is a question like that on the test, I assume there, because there's only one here about that. Oh, this one says chapter. This is, I changed this on yours. This should be chapter 6. It was different last year, so I changed those. Excuse me. So number 47, so now we are solving these. So again, I'm going to show you the way I did these, but you can literally do whichever way you want for a lot of these. So if you really like the quadratic formula, it works for just about all of them, anytime it's a quadratic. The only ones I would say definitely don't use them on. This type of problem you just have to make sure you FOIL first. Get the 144 on both sides. Or sorry, get the 144 on the other side, and then use your quadratic formula. So if you want to do it, you can. I would highly recommend doing it that way. And this one, you cannot use a quadratic formula because it's not a quadratic. It's got a square root, not an exponent. So those are really the only ones that are solving problems that I would say you definitely have to make sure. I would not use a quadratic formula for those. So I think some of these are factoring, so I'm going to try to give you a different example. If you look at like number, I don't know, for this first one, if you would rather use the quadratic formula and I show you factoring, if you let me know, I can show you the other way to do that. It is up to you. Again, I know some people just will use factoring for all of them. That works really well, except for one like number 48, you can't factor. But you can use the formula for just about all of them. Number 53, 54, a little bit different. Okay. So make sure all these have to be set equal to 0 for the most part. So we have x squared minus 8x plus 15. There is no leading, so I would use factoring, or at least I would try factoring, but again, I know quadratic formula does work, so if you want to try that instead, you can. 15 goes on the top, negative 8 goes on the bottom. Factors of 15 are 1 and 15. So that doesn't give us, that gives us positive 8. Well, just like we talked about before, all you need to remember is you need to change negative 3 times negative 5 is positive 15. Negative 3 plus negative 5 is positive, is negative 8. We end up with x minus 3 and x minus 5. And what would you plug in to get 0 for this one? Well, you would plug in positive 3. Positive 3 minus 3 is 0. And what would you plug in 0? You would plug in positive 5. Now the next one, if you want to try factoring with this one, you can. That would be what? Negative 36 to add up to be negative 7. So negative 36 would be negative 1 and 36, negative 2 and 18, negative 3 and 12, negative 4 and 9, negative 6 and 6. That I don't think any of those add up to be negative 7. Last time I did this, I made a mistake, so I'm trying to be extra careful. Yeah, none of those give you negative 7. The reason is because you can't factor this one. So technically, as far as factoring goes, this one is prime, but that's not solving factoring. We can do those, even if that just means you have to use quadratic formula. So, give myself a little bit of room. A, remember it's got to be set equal to 0, so we already have that. That's great. My A is 9. My B is negative 7. My C is negative 4. Then you plug that in your equation. So I have negative 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared minus 4 times A is 9 times C is negative 4 over 2 times A is 9. Remember, if you don't know what that is, that you'll get. So if you would type this in your calculator and get your answer, you're more than welcome to do that. I still like to do it in a couple different steps. That's how my calculator works a little bit better. So that's positive 7. The denominator is 18. Then inside your square root, if you plug that in, make sure you use parentheses. If you do not use parentheses, you're not going to get the right answer for this one. Since that 7 is negative, if you don't use parentheses, you're going to miss this. So make sure you use parentheses. That should get you 193. There's nothing else we can do. That square root of 193 is going to be a decimal. If you could reduce it, if it did give you a whole number, you should double check in your calculator. If it gave you a whole number, then I would like you to reduce it, but it does not give you a whole number, so we're going to leave it like that. And again, your calculator, if you put this whole thing in there, for a lot of you, it'll just spit that out, and that's good enough. Factoring for that 5. I mean, there's not really a lot of factors of 25, so that's 5. So x plus 5. So what would you plug in to get 0 for this one? -5. Well, you only get one answer, but if you use factoring, you get that same answer twice. Any difference? If you put down -5, or if you write it down twice, with multiple choice, we'll probably just write it down once. Now this one is a toss-up. I don't know which way I recommend doing it. One way you could do it is you could solve by factoring by noticing it is a difference of squares. So my A is x, my B is 11. So it's x plus 11 times x minus 11 equal to -11, and x is equal to +11. So if you want to do that, you can. The other way for this one, if you have x squared minus 121 is equal to 0, you could add 121 to both sides. You get x squared is equal to 121. To cancel out the squared, you have to take the square root. This one's a little bit of a quicker way, but you have to remember the square root of 121 is 11, but you have to have the plus or minus. And again, I'd be willing to bet that there's probably an answer for a question like this on the test that has positive 11, and that's it. So make sure you can tell the difference. This one, personally, there is a leading coefficient, so I usually use a quadratic formula, but factoring that has a leading coefficient, so I'll go ahead and do this one. So times 15 to be 11, 32 and 15. 4 doesn't work, 5 and 6. So 5 and 6 are the ones you're looking for. 5 and 6 are not your answers. You divide both of these by 2. X plus 5 over 2. I said this before, and I didn't really mention it since, but this is where you stop and solve. X is equal to -5 over 2. But if you didn't realize that, keep solving. 2x plus 5 times x. Actually, this gives you -3. This part, if you're not sure, you could set it. 2x plus 5 equal to 0. Subtract 5, 2x is equal to -5, divide by 2, x is equal to -5 over 2. Either way is fine, doesn't make any difference to me. Let me clean this up. $52. There's no leading coefficient, so I would use factoring, or I would try that first. If you want to use quadratic formula, that but this one, factoring does work. So factors of 32 that add up to be -12. 1 and 32, 2 and 16. 3 doesn't work, 4 and 8. 5 doesn't work, 6 doesn't work, 7 doesn't work. 8 works, but we're back to where we wanted. But again, these none of them add up to be -12, so we need to change our signs. So that's -4 and -8. They both multiply to be positive 32, both add up to be -12. So x minus 4, x. Yeah, that means what would make this 0, +4. What would make this 0, +8. And the last one's, again, a couple different ways to 53, but I think up on this one. First, we have the the parentheses. So before we do anything with that 6, I've got to get rid of that square. Take the square. It's not 144. A lot of people do that. I don't know if it's an accident or if they think that it's right. But don't forget, you actually need a plus or minus. That's why the question is, but a lot of people miss it. This 6 is positive 12, or x minus 6 is negative 12. Add 6 to both of these. 6 to both of these. X is equal to 6. Mention this. I think I said this in the last video, but please realize you could also work backwards for all these and plug in your multiple choice answers and see which one actually works. Does 18, if you plug in for x, does that work? Does negative 6 if you plug in work? Try all your options if you need to. That's way better than leaving it blank. If you have to resort to that, I'd probably skip it and go back to it just to make sure you have enough time. But definitely use multiple choice to your advantage. This next one, again, before we get rid of that square root, I have to get it all by itself. Oh, 18 is not correct. Sorry. Add 10. The square root of x is equal to 27. Then get rid of that 3 since it's divide. The square root of x is equal to 9. Cancel out a square root. I need a squared. So you get x is equal to 9 squared is 81. Now it is not plus or minus because we did not cancel out a quadratic. We did not cancel out an exponent of 2. A square root does not give you 2 answers. And again, you can do that by literally looking at it. 2 answers here, 2 answers here, 2 answers here, not 2 answers. There's not an exponent of 2 before you even start. You can see that. You have a formula, negative b over 2 times 8. It's negative 8 over 2. That's positive 8 over 4 is equal to 2. Technically, should be x is equal to 2, but again, it's multiple choice, so you're not going to miss that because of that notation. Find the axis symmetry. Okay. I wanted to make sure it didn't tell me to find the vertex as well. What are the x-intercepts of the solution? What are the x-intercepts below? They specify it's the solutions. That's just where it crosses. So this is at 1. Put them in parentheses. Again, it's multiple choice, so it's not a huge deal. But that is not an ordered pair. Those are the solutions. Graph the following quadratic. First step is finding the x. So it's negative 8 over 2 times negative 2. That's negative 8 over negative 4, which is 2. So that is right here. Once you have that 2, and again, it's not a bad idea to double check right here just to make sure, especially your signs are correct. So it's negative b, so that ends up negative 8. 2 times negative 2. Okay. So my vertex then, we plug that back into my equation. So negative 2 times 2 squared plus 8 times 2 minus 3. If you plug that into your, you should be getting 5. So again, technically your vertex is at 2, 5. Technically, it is an ordered pair. And then from here, we use our table, our third step. So we put our vertex in the middle, 2 numbers lower, 2 numbers bigger, and then we plug those numbers in. And again, you're just plugging them into that equation we started with. So it's negative 2 times 0 squared plus 8 times 0 minus 3. The next one's negative 2 times 1 squared plus 8 times 1 minus 3. And again, I wouldn't risk it. I would do the same thing with these. Just plug them into your calculator exactly how you see them. It maybe is a little bit of work, but honestly, it's not a ton of work. And I guess I should say it's going to take a little bit of time, but it's not hard. You're just plugging numbers into your calculator. So you end up getting negative 3, 3, and then 3, negative 3. And again, that's why I encourage you in all 4 of those. Because that's a good way to check your work. Since those 2 are the same and these 2 are the same, you know you're on the right track. If they wouldn't be, then you definitely missed something up. And it's probably, a lot of times, it's your axis of symmetry. And a lot of times it's because people have a negative instead of a positive, or vice versa. So when we plot these points, we go over 0, down 3, over 1, up 3, 2, 5 is up there, over 3, up 3, and over 4, down 3. So that is your graph. All right, that is it for the final exam review. Obviously, if you have any questions, let me know. But you guys have a lot of resources to use. You have the answer key, you have this video. This semester review is listed in order by chapter. And so if you struggle with a chapter, you can go back to that chapter. You can re-watch any of those lessons. I have videos of, I think, every lesson we've done. There's worksheets up there if you want extra practice on each individual lesson or each individual chapter. There's the practice test and a video over those from each one of those chapters as well. So if you didn't really do well with chapter 3, you could go watch the practice test video. Maybe that's a better idea to do it. But make sure you absolutely, I mean, at this point, most of you guys are probably done. Maybe this is preaching to the choir, but this is the most important thing you can do to study. Once you're done with this, then yes, you can branch out. If you have any questions, let me know. Other than that, good luck. Thanks for watching.